Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm joined tonight by Mitchell
Hi all.
and also by Dan.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely good to be back. It's been a very short off season, it seems. We had our first episode back last week to talk about our transfer activity over the summer, but now we'll look ahead to the real thing. But I guess with the World Cup and everything that came with it, it's just felt like a very short turnaround since the end of last season. Dan, I guess because you went on last week, I'll get your thoughts. How did you feel with the way the season ended up and how we've sort of made our moves over the summer so far?
Well, I mean, with the way the season was going for a little while towards the probably the middle of last season, you'd have to be happy to say that we at least managed to maintain our status in the championship. And I think we were starting to see towards the end a little bit. Adkins was starting to really get the team shape and everything the way that he was wanting it, and so hopefully he's brought in a few players that obviously he wants, and that hopefully now we will start building, and he can, take us just in a positive direction, I hope.
And those signings, we got to see a decent share of them in the games since our last episode against Barnsley and then against North Ferriby. Firstly, with that Barnsley game, we drew 1-1 in that. I guess we talked last week, Mitch, about results potentially not being too important at this stage. You would be a little bit concerned, though, with the nature of the goal we conceded. We were talking just before off air about the keeping in that situation from Marshall. And in fairness to him, there is a deflection on the ball, so you can say he's a little bit unsighted with that shot, but it does end up going straight to him and it kind of slips through his arms. So you'd have to be concerned with the season only 4 or 5 days away that he's not looking in the best of form.
Well, that's right. I think Alan McGregor would have made that save pretty comfortably. So, and we said it a few times now that we're not very comfortable with him at the back. But in saying that, there's a time where Jakubovic was not very great as well, and he come good in the end. So, I mean, I don't have the same hope, but I'd like to think so.
I guess that's actually a great point because there was a lot of criticism for Jakubovic early on. He really turned it around and became a bit of a cult figure. And I feel like, you look at McShane as well as another with a similar sort of situation, started off quite poorly and turned it all around. So it's almost like the best cult figures are actually born out of that early struggle. So, hey, who knows? By the end of the season, he could be, one of our fan favourites. Dan, Bowen getting on the score sheet, first goal of the preseason. Best time to sort of get it as he's really rearing up to get ready for the season proper. Must be positive signs from that front.
Anytime your forwards are scoring goals is good. So, and particularly with how we went last season, there's always that little fear in the back of your mind about that first season syndrome where he's going to come out and go really well and then be really ineffective in the following season. But hopefully, I mean, he's on the score sheet. He's been the couple of pre-seasons he's done games been involved in. He's done pretty well from what I understand. So hopefully he's just sort of carrying on from where he was. My little notes here I had that, hopefully he continues with his form. He scores a bunch of goals. We get to hold on to him, maybe an injury in December to scare off any buyers in January. But I think, if he continues on and keeps doing what he's doing. I mean, it was a good finish from a tight angle. So it wasn't like he got a tap in this time. It was the same sort of stuff he was pulling off last year. A good technical finish. So,
and one question I put to both of you, I guess, we've struggled so far in any potential striker signings. And Dicko, he's an industrious player. He works hard for the team, and he'll get his share of goals based on last season. Is there a decent chance that Bowen really goes on and becomes our top scorer again and cracks 20 goals potentially for the season if he stays for the full year?
Do you want the short answer or the long answer?
Go for it.
I think the short answer is yes. There's a very good chance that Bowen will be our top scorer again. And the longer answer is basically that, as you sort of Dicko, as hard as he works. I mean, was just watching the highlights from the Barnsley game, and had an opportunity one-on-one with the keeper, admittedly with a defender on his back, but to tap it away, and he sort of swung at it and didn't get much contact at all, and just played it straight to the keeper. And I think, obviously, like it's very early days for this season, but you need if he's going to be if he's the front man, the main man up there, he needs to be able to consistently start putting those chances away if he's going to at least challenge to be our top scorer.
I don't know if you guys have seen the image, but there was an image floating around on Twitter of Dicko potentially joining a celebration for a goal or something like that. And from the angle, his thighs just look gigantic. And someone was saying it doesn't look like he's skipped leg day at all this preseason. So hopefully he's got a bit of power in his legs to get on the end of a few decent through balls. Mitch, what's your take on the situation? Do you reckon Bowen's sort of still looking our most likely goal scorer?
Yeah, definitely at this stage. I don't think Dicko or Campbell are consistent enough up front, though. Dicko's still only 26, so there's still time for him to improve. But I can't see really anyone really pushing Jared Bowen for the top goal scorer this season.
And then we had the win against Ferriby on the Monday, I think it was, and it was really good to see. It was announced quite late. It sounds as if the club sort of realised their mistake and backtracked on not having the Billy Blythe Trophy game against North Ferriby. So it was good to see from that perspective. And even, I mean, as an improvement on last season, it seemed there was a much more active involvement from the senior players. I know last season, I think it was basically just an under-23s game. So good to see a few of the players who didn't start against Barnes to get the chance. I think Irvine was meant to be involved in this game, but it sounds like he's still crook, suffering from a stomach bug or something like that, so he didn't take any part. Milinkovic setting up both goals. I think Campbell with the first, and can't remember off the top of my head who scored the second. But good to see Milinkovic starting to show his creative side of his game, and he's made a few decent comments in the media the last few days about wanting to win over the City fans. So what did you make of that one, Mitch?
Great for Milinkovic to get 2 assists. As I mentioned last week, it's good to have an exciting prospect of a winger, and the fact that he's contributed pre-season already, it's a positive sign. Good thing to have that game as well, because I think it was pretty disappointing when there was nothing about it, because even I look forward to it. We look forward to it, and we can't really follow it at all, but just because.
It's a nice sort of pre-season gesture, I guess, and community sort of game.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a win's a win. We'll take it, but again, pre-season role, not really much to look into, I don't think.
And Dan, I guess it's good to see Grzycki also back in the squad. I think there was a lot of talk and I guess assumptions from most of us that he was basically off in the summer, and he's still around. I think he took part in this game, or he was at least in the stand for this game, so interacting with the fans. I guess on that point with Milinkovic, last season, as you were sort of saying at the start, we had Wilson on one wing, really sort of helping our creativity, scoring goals, and showing a quite positive end to the season. Obviously, not being able to get him back on loan from Liverpool, hopefully Milinkovic can step up and sort of somewhat fill that hole.
Wilson did leave. I mean, it was a shame that we weren't able to regain his services for the year, because he exceeded my expectations and probably a lot of expectations by far. Despite, like, there were raps on him, but the impact he had, and it was instant, like, was immense. I think it is always good, as Mitch was saying, that to have have someone come in like Milinkovic, a wide player and creative, and to be able to instantly be to getting a couple of assists and stuff. It's only going to help his confidence while he's growing into this side, and that's what those players need. They need their confidence up so they can keep doing what they're doing. So.
It's a bit interesting, I guess. Sorry, I was just going to lead on with that point about Grzycki as well. That we've now got Milinkovic, Grzycki, and also Bowen theoretically all playing for those 2 wing spots. So it's good to have a little bit of competition there.
Yeah, it's always good to have competition for spots. So and especially when you've got like it's not just depth for the sake of depth. They are three quality players all vying for those wide positions. So I think I think it's going to come down to Grosicki's attitude because obviously last year or last season he stated basically that he was looking for a move, and then that didn't happen. Come January or through the end of the season, his form wasn't there, and then it was sort of he was relying on having a good World Cup to put himself back in the frame, and that didn't really happen. So he sort of no one's really. I don't think anyone's even like no one's mentioning him anywhere as a
I think I
rumor
saw
or
one.
anything. So
I think I saw one potentially Celta Vigo or someone like that. I remember seeing that name floated, or another Spanish club. But you're right. I mean, this doesn't seem to have been anything solid, and certainly his World Cup won't have helped. Mitch, do you think it's a good thing that Grzycki's kind of stuck around it? He's obviously on his day, he's one of our best players, and he's almost sort of the new Hernandez in that sense. That Hernandez for a while was very mercurial and you didn't know what you're going to get from him. But now it's almost Grzycki where he could win us a game by just going out there and having a blinder, or he could be the most invisible player on the pitch.
Yeah, well, I like Grosicki. Yeah, he can be invisible sometimes, but that ability to win us games and to have such an X factor available, and granted, it's not out there all the time, but when it is, he's definitely the best player on the pitch. So I'd be ecstatic if he stayed. Whether he can put in and do it consistently every week, I guess now that we've got the competition for the wing spot, then that could help. So yeah, I'm happy that he stayed in the end.
And then I guess we've got about a week left of the transfer window now. Since the last podcast, we haven't made any extra signings. Probably had hoped that we'd have at least made a few moves. I think we've had a second bid rejected for Norwood, so at least positive signs there that we're kind of pushing on and trying to make that a signing. Um, what would you say is the most pressing priority at the moment, Mitch? Is it another striker? I think would probably be the answer most people go for, or is it another defensive midfielder? Because there's been a few concerns I've seen about the way Stewart's gone in pre-season.
Yeah, I'm not impressed with Stewart thus far, but it's definitely got to be a striker.
Certainly doesn't help with
Goals.
Stewart that he was essentially a swap for Robertson, I think.
Yeah, a lot of my Liverpool mates are hacking into me for that. It's not great. But yeah, no, definitely a striker. Goals are invaluable in football, as everyone knows, and without goals, you're not going to win games. And we've got a winger who's probably going to be our most prolific scorer. So
Do you see any chance that we play Bowen up top? I mean, I'm just sort of trying to think. I suspect he's probably played there a little bit in maybe a two striker formation, but with this talk that we've got the extra winger really, I wonder if we'd sort of look to push Bowen a bit further forward.
possibly, it could happen. I think maybe like on a few FIFAs ago, he was actually listed as a striker. So I
Right.
assumed he's played there at some stage in his career. So what, he could probably do it. But again, I'd be a bit a bit. I don't know. I guess you got to take the risk, but to take him off the wing where he's been
Yeah.
so solid, it's yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. Dan, what are your thoughts on the transfer window so far, and where we really still need to strengthen with just over a week to go?
I mean we seem to have filled up the back line pretty well, so I'm pretty happy with that. The preseason I mean, it's a preseason, but there's been a bit scrappy and stuff, but I think the defense has pretty well held their own. And for considering what we've four defenders or whatever we've signed or something so far, um, of and they're all mixing and matching, and we're trying to figure out what's the best combination. So it's once they all start to be able to play a bit consistently and gel, I think we'll be pretty safe there. I think I made a note on the Barnsley game that Dan Batty looked really
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So you've got another option for that in that middle of the park there, particularly in that lead up to Bowen's goal. There's some lovely little interplay that he's involved in, and some great passing and great movement. So I don't think the midfield's I don't think there's much too many holes there. I mean, you've got a fair bit of depth when you list through everyone you got. You've got Irvine and Henriksen and Evandro and
Terrell, yeah.
Toro and Batty and Stewart, and so there's plenty of numbers there, and I think I feel like there's this part of me that's going, we haven't been active enough in the transfer market, and I like thinking about it, but now I'm going through this, talking about it now, and I'm starting to think that maybe we've sort of just filled in the holes we need. I agree with Mitch. Like obviously it's the obvious choice is a striker, but and I don't think that. I'm sure Bowen could play up top, but I don't think he will unless something happened to both Dicko and Campbell.
Fair enough.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting one to see what moves we do make and how we do shape the squad because it's a good point. And Batty's one that I guess like Bowen last season and Clark last season even, and time in the season before. It's great to see these young kids kind of coming through the academy because for so many years the academy just didn't really produce any first team players. So it is a great feeling to see those guys starting to come through. I guess the other bit of news just before the Villa game preview as well is the news last night or overnight that Marcus Henriksen's become the new City captain. I thought it was really smart and cool the way that they put together that video to announce it. It makes it feel much more important. In the past we'll have Davies having been the captain, then suddenly Dawson's the captain, and there's not really any fanfare about it. Um, Mitch, I saw you bumped one of Rick's old tweets about Henriksen playing a game last season. It might have been, and it's pretty amazing to see how far he's come since then, in the eyes of the fans. Really, that he's really sort of developed into one of the more important players in the team. And when I think it's been about finding the right position for him. And when he's played there, he's looked quite good. So, what are your thoughts on him taking over the captaincy?
Well, even when he first started to play there, he wasn't that great. A lot of the tweets that I was reading were, "Why are we playing Henriksen? Why are we playing Henriksen at defensive midfielder? He's useless there." Blah blah. But so it's pretty remarkable how much he's turned it around in what 8 months.
Yeah,
And yeah, the way we announced it, I thought it was pretty cool because, as you said, there's not really been much of an impotence on the fact of who is our captain, and it's kind of just like I don't know. It kind of seems like they're really embracing it and endorsing it and putting that responsibility on him that he clearly wants.
yeah.
So yeah, that's really cool. I'm not sure how he'll go. Obviously, I've not really seen much leadership, like not much of an opportunity for him to express his leadership
Yeah,
skills. But
yeah.
happy to give it a try for sure.
Yeah, and it's Dan. It does feel much more like here in Australia, you'll see with like rugby league or AFL or something where they do have that sort of announcement around who the captain is. So it's quite cool to see Henriksen given that chance to really sort of announce himself and really kind of lead the team forward this season.
yeah, well, it was interesting because he was captain in one of the pre-seasons. Was it against Barnsley maybe? And
I
he
think
then he
so,
came
yeah.
out afterwards and said, I basically said I want it full time. If you give it to me, I'll take it on. I'll take it on, and they have. So, I mean, like, it's good. I mean, I don't, as Mitch was saying, like, it's quite a turnaround. Even us last season, we're talking and going, Henriksen's anonymous in this on the weekend, and is he going to start this week? Is that going to be a problem? Is he a liability? But um, I think the way that they're doing, what they've done, the way they announced it, I think part of that is also just so they're still building on that idea of community engagement and getting engaged with everything, and by making a bigger deal of these sort of incidents or instances, it helped. I think the fans, we feel a little bit more involved because we get to see a little bit more, and then they put out a video, and you get to hear what everyone thinks about the captaincy and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, and it's been good, and it's a credit to the club and its social media management over this summer has been fantastic. And you see so much more engagement now from the club, whether it's a bit of banter with the fans, and even Atkins himself has been really active on Twitter recently in terms of responding to fans, having a joke around. I saw him saying to a bloke who said he'd had chips for breakfast. He said, "Nah, mate, that's for after lunch when you're having a pint of Carling." But having a bit of a joke with the fans, it's really good to see that sort of engagement, which has been lacking in previous years. So um, it's a nice and welcome turnaround, I guess. Um, we've got our first game of the season to look forward to, guys. So let's turn our attention now to the game coming up against Aston Villa. Tuesday morning our time. It's the Monday evening fixture over in the UK, televised. Lots of anticipation for another clash with Bruce, which almost wasn't to be. I mean, Bruce seemed to be hanging on for dear life with Villa after they got their takeover from their new Egyptian owners, who Mitch, you're telling us fourth or third, was it, richest owners in all of
Yeah,
England,
yeah, third behind the Chelsea owners and the City owners.
which is pretty remarkable. And they were seemingly lining up Thierry Henry to take over, and somehow Bruce has talked them out of it.
Yeah,
So,
it's. I would have felt really bad for Steve Bruce if he got the punt, just because of the new owners. Like he did a good job last season. Yeah, he didn't get them up, but you can't take a team that's finished mid-table or mid-table to one spot away from the Premier League and get the sack. Surely.
would have been crazy, and it was interesting seeing some of Alan Nixon's tweets on Twitter around their um, uh, signing situation in terms of trying to sign new players, where Bruce apparently is basically competing against this new um, head of football or whatever their title is, director of football or something, where they're trying to basically, on one hand, look to follow the Wolves model of getting Mendes to bring in a whole bunch of high quality loanees, which it does look like the first one's been signed with Moreira from Atletico. Whereas Bruce, on the other hand, sitting there saying, no, no, I know what I'm doing. I can recruit these players. So it sounds like there's a little bit of an internal power struggle going on there. Um, Dan, what have you made of Villa's summer? We've already sort of talked about our transfer activity. Villa really only announcing their first signing today or yesterday with a pretty interesting, if you would call it that, announcement video. But it's been a little bit quiet from them. Potentially gives us a bit of a chance to catch them unawares in the opening game.
Look, I just like to see a club have a torrid, tumultuous off season, like and have it affect them the way that when we did, it affected us. But I feel like it won't. Like it's just Villa, like they were strong, they were good last year, and as much as I would love to just go, they've had a disrupted off season and they haven't really signed anyone, and I'd love to see them just like plummet. I feel like they'll be lucky enough that it's all just gonna galvanize and bring them all together, and they'll like Bruce he's a good manager. He knows what he's doing. He did it for a while, for a good long time with us, so. I'm sure he'll keep them in a similar position to where they finished last year. I mean, with not too many changes to the squad, you wouldn't expect too many changes overall, really.
Mitch, how are you seeing our lineup based on preseason? I mean, it seems like Marshall's basically stitched up the number one shirt down back, and the centre backs is probably the most interesting position just because we have so many options there unexpectedly over the off season. But I mean, personally, I could see Device and Burke starting there, but I feel like guys like McDonald, who at least has been here last season, and then maybe even Kane can play at centre back as well. I'm not sure. How are you seeing the lineup?
Yeah, I think it'll be Device and McDonald. I think we'll have someone there from last season, and I think he's played a fair bit of preseason as well. Well, obviously Kingsley at left back because we're not going to put anyone else there, are we? Right back, you'd assume Lehigh. Defensive midfielders, Henriksen obviously, and not well with Irvine ill.
Batty
Can't select.
potentially, or do you think Stewart would get the nod?
Yeah, look, I'm not too impressed if it is Stewart, but not sure if he'll take a risk on anybody else. So it'll probably end up being Stewart Henriksen. Behind obviously Bowen, and I assume Milinkovic will get the nod over Krasicki. Evandro, and not sure if I go Campbell or Dicko. I'll say Dicko, but yeah, not sure.
Any other options there, Dan?
Oh, I don't really see too much different from what Mitch does. I mean, I'd love to see maybe one of the other goalkeepers get a go because I mean, it's not nothing against Marshall. He has been a good goalkeeper, just unfortunately not really for us.
Yeah.
And like it's harsh, but the only reason he's still at the club and McGregor's not is because of contract length.
Yeah, yeah,
Like if they were both ending, if both their contracts were ending last year, like you'd have kept McGregor hands down. It's just that Marshall still has years left and McGregor didn't.
The
I'm
other
going to change my
Oh, sorry?
opinion.
Yep.
I think it'll be Terrell that'll start over Stewart.
Oh, okay. That'd be interesting. I guess I was going to say the other option as well, with the interesting one, is Kane seems to have had quite a good preseason, and I can't quite tell. We seem to be playing him either on the wing or at right back, so he's almost kind of competing with either Lehigh or potentially Bowen, which seems a really tough position for him to crack into. But it's also hard to see, with his decent preseason, what else we would do with him to get him into the side. I don't know. I don't know how well Bowen would go on the left wing, or again, I mean, could we push Bowen central behind Dicko? I'm not sure. I feel like he's the sort of guy who last season at least seemed to strike me as having that confidence about his game where you could almost play him essentially anywhere and he would just still score the goals or provide the assists and really kind of crack on. So I don't know whether Adkins wants to play around with it that early, but it's just interesting sometimes. Like, for instance, last season, before we had, or when Kingsley got injured, we had Clark playing at left back, whereas before the season, we would have thought Clark's a centre mid. So he kind of got forced into that position because of the personnel we had available. I almost wonder if whether it's, Kane sort of gets pushed somewhere unusual or whether Bowen gets played more centrally or something like that. It could that's an interesting one as well. But then did I'll start with you, Mitch. Did you have a score prediction for this one?
Well, it's still a few days away, and some of the links I've seen for the Villa signings, I saw them linked with Yerry Mina, which is obviously not going to happen, right? But there's some crazy ones going on. Obviously, Nick Powell and Steve Bruce, that link will always come up, but I don't think that'll happen either. They're linked with Jordan Hugel from I think
Oh
he's at
yes, I
West
saw
Ham.
that one, and also Abraham.
Tammy Abraham, yeah. But so I assume even if they do sign them, they probably won't start or get many minutes at all against us. Look, I'm not overly confident. I think we've got a mid-table squad, and when I think that, I'm not all that confident because if I think mid-table will probably end up lower, like shoot for the stars,
Yeah.
whatnot. So, and I think now that Villa look like they're getting themselves back on track, if Grealish plays, I think Villa win, but I'm not sure on his situation.
Well, it sounds
So
like Spurs are lining up another bid for him.
yeah, I'm not sure if he's been training with them or whatnot, or if he's involved in the plans of Bruce's. But I'm going to be confident just because I'll be optimistic and say we will win 2-1, and Milinkovic will score the winner.
Wow, very nice. And Dan?
I think probably I think it'll be similar to the the same fixture from last year. I think it'll be pretty tight and a bit scrappy and still feeling each other out. I mean, Villa, if they stay much the same as they look to be, then they'll be pretty solid and they'll know what they're doing. Whereas I think we've probably got some good X factor in there. It's just that we're still gelling as a team completely. But I think another little scrappy 1-1 draw was probably the most likely.
Yeah, I do think I'll lean towards a 1-1 draw or even potentially a slim Villa win, a 2-1 win for them, just to sort of balance it out, I guess, with Mitch's prediction as well. Look, it's a really hard one to read because they've had such a poor off season as well. Whether that affects the players or not, it's hard to know. but you do get the feeling it could start like last season's game did, where they kind of were all over us early and then we sort of fought our way back into it. And I guess it's interesting with preseason, even though the results have been pretty average, it's at least shown that we've got a decent fighting spirit, and we've conceded a few poor goals, but we've always seemed to fight back into games. And I think, well, the Barnsley and Newcastle games, certainly we conceded the first goal and then fought back to get a draw. So it's good to see that the players seem to have a bit of a fighting spirit about them and they don't just sort of drop their heads. I think we had that one preseason game where we got smashed 4-1, but I think that could have been a personnel sort of thing. Um, so yeah, look, it's hard to read how the season's going to go. I think we've signed a lot of promising but relatively unknown kids, and it could go quite well. It could be that they gel and we can get on a bit of a run and really sort of surprise a few teams. Or it could just be like Mitch is saying, which I think is probably going to be closer to the truth, is, we can sort of aim for mid-table if we can go on a few results. We saw last season that kids can be quite inconsistent, so we might sort of have a few pretty poor runs and hopefully steer ourselves safe, clear from relegation troubles, as much as we did last season. But yeah, look, I'm struggling to see a win against Villa opening day. I think a draw is probably the best we can hope for, but who knows? I mean, Milinkovic, Bowen, Evandro, we've got some pretty decent players starting, and Evandro's had a great preseason as well. So um, we've got the players there. It's just whether they can click on the day. But hopefully we can get a positive result to start the season. So thanks for coming on, Dan.
No problem, anytime.
And thanks as well for coming on, Mitch.
Yeah, no worries. Just one more thing.
Yeah.
So when you said about Villa's off season, like with the obviously the club and the managers and the players being sold and whatnot as chaos, their results on the pitch, like in preseason, I know it's not a lot to look at, but they've been pretty good. And Kodja seems to have like found his scoring boots again, and he's scoring for fun. Again, not against great teams, but that's gonna worry me, Jonathan Kodja up front. So just watch that.
And that's a fair point, because I mean last season, preseason, I'm pretty sure Bowen had a fantastic preseason, and everyone kind of said, yeah, it's just preseason though. He'll probably struggle to score in the championship, and he was great. So I think as much as you can't look into results, you can certainly look into individual players'
Yeah,
performances.
exactly.
So yeah, Kodja being in good form, he was always one that I thought he is a very, very good striker, and it just seemed that whether it was consistency or form or fitness or whatever it was, kind of held him back a little bit last season. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
certainly if he gets going, will be very frightening.
exactly.
But thanks for coming on, Mitch.
No worries. Thank
Uh,
you for having me.
No worries, and thank you everyone for listening in. First game of the season will be an exciting one. Hopefully we can get off to the perfect start with 3 points against Villa. And until next time, come on, City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
There's no turning